You know how sometimes the best parenting strategy is to just let your kids figure things out on their own? Well, Britain accidentally did exactly that with its American colonies, and it kind of changed the course of history.
Oh, it absolutely did. And what's fascinating is that this hands-off approach wasn't even an official policy. It was more like an unwritten understanding.
Today, we're diving into something called salutary neglect, how Britain's loose supervision of its American colonies in the 1700s led to some pretty unexpected consequences.
It was just this unofficial understanding that Britain would loosely enforce trade regulations and imperial supervision over the American colonies during the 17th and early 18th centuries.
But why would Britain just let things slide like that?
Well, there were actually several practical reasons. First, you have to remember that Britain was 3,000 miles away, literally an ocean apart.
Ah, so this was more about necessity than strategy?
Partly, yes. The sheer distance made strict enforcement of laws incredibly challenging and costly. But there was also this idea that a lighter touch would encourage colonial loyalty and economic growth.
And did it work? I mean, in terms of economic growth?
Oh, it worked spectacularly well, at least initially. Take New England's rum and timber industries, for example. They absolutely thrived during this period.
Really? How so?
Well, here's a perfect example. Local pine trees were supposed to be reserved for British Navy ships, but during this period, colonists just used them freely for their own timber industry.
And Britain just looked the other way?
Pretty much. And it wasn't just timber. Agriculture and manufacturing flourished too. The southern colonies were exporting tobacco, and trade with foreign partners was booming.
But wasn't there supposed to be this whole system of trade regulations, the Navigation Acts and all that?
Yes, technically all goods had to be shipped on English vessels, and certain items could only be traded with England. But enforcement was, let's say, relaxed. While colonial governors were supposed to have considerable power, the legislatures actually gained substantial control over local finances, including the governor's salary. And this fostered a really strong tradition of self-rule and local decision-making. The colonies were essentially learning to govern themselves.
But surely Britain must have realized this was happening?
Oh, they did. But as long as the colonies remained loyal and contributed to Britain's economic profitability, they were willing to let it continue.
So what changed? When did this period of beneficial neglect end?
The French and Indian War, that was the real turning point. It ended in 1763 and Britain emerged victorious, but they were left with an enormous debt, more than £122 million. Just the interest alone was over £4.4 million a year.
And let me guess, they looked to the colonies to help pay it off?
Exactly. They started enforcing those previously ignored Navigation Acts and introduced new taxes like the Sugar Act in 1764 and the Stamp Act in 1765.
How did the colonists react to this sudden change?
Well, after decades of relative autonomy, they didn't take it well at all.
I can imagine. It's like suddenly having your parents crack down on everything after years of freedom.
That's actually a pretty good analogy. The colonists had grown accustomed to managing their own affairs and trading freely.
And they weren't about to give that up easily?
No, they saw these new taxes and restrictions as direct infringements on their rights and autonomy.
So in a way, Britain's hands-off approach actually set the stage for independence?
Absolutely. The period of salutary neglect had given the colonies a taste of self-governance and economic independence. They'd developed their own political institutions and trading relationships.
It's fascinating how this unofficial policy of basically doing nothing had such huge consequences.
And what's really interesting is that it wasn't just about trade and taxes. The colonies developed their own distinct identity during this period.
So they were developing their own unique culture and identity, separate from Britain?
Exactly. And this cultural independence, combined with their experience in self-governance, made it very difficult for Britain to reassert control later.
It's almost like Britain accidentally created the perfect conditions for revolution.
That's actually a really good way to put it. By allowing the colonies so much freedom, they essentially trained them for independence.
So what's the big takeaway here? What can we learn from this period of salutary neglect?
I think one of the biggest lessons is how unintended consequences can shape history. Britain's hands-off approach was meant to maintain control while minimizing costs.
But instead, it laid the groundwork for losing control entirely.
Exactly. And it shows how freedom, once given, is very hard to take back.
Sometimes the most powerful changes come not from what we do, but from what we don't do.
Or, in Britain's case, what they didn't do until it was too late.
Thanks for listening, everyone.